Hey, what's up, YouTube? Welcome to Play Painted Live again. Here we go with another live stream. This one is not going to be great to watch from a painting standpoint because this is like the mother of all batch paints. So, but anyway, welcome to the stream. I'm just going to turn the camera on for a little bit because I'm bored. That's the God honest truth. So I'm just going to turn this on, and like if in hopping on the feed, feel free. Let me know. I'll shoot you an invite. But again, like don't hop on and have nothing to say. We'll just kind of take it from there. Okay, so let me show you guys what we're working on tonight. Because I did actually, you know what? Before we gotta get you caught up because that's what we typically do first. So I'll push all this stuff out of the way. Okay, so give me 1 second. Break out some stuff for you to look at. So kind of back. I'm back in a painting mode, which is great. And I'm hoping that we can get some good gaming experiences from the stuff that I just painted, but you know, it seldom ever works out that way. It's just sort of what we're doing. So, dun, dun, dun. So this is, I know the camera's like way too close, but this is the Guild Ball kickoff set. Okay, and I think I was working on some of this stuff last time. So here it is. Here's let me show you just kind of we'll just pan around a little bit, and I'll pull out a couple of these so you can look at them. But I love that they all kind of fit in here. You can see I tricked out the little dice tray here by adding pundit dice, right? Because you gotta represent if this set is going to be designed mostly for, well, not mostly, but this is where I'm going to be doing my game demos out of is from this set. 2 guild balls there. But yeah, let's have a look at some of these kickoff plastics, and I'll talk about my experience painting them a little bit, and then we'll get on to the boringness of painting the stuff that I'm working on tonight. So yeah, overall, you know, I think the plastics are pretty good. I kind of like how these turned out. You can see I'm going with a little bit slightly darker hair on this honor here, but you know, you can see you can paint them to a pretty good standard. There's some things that are different about this model. One, it's bigger, which I really like, and then I'm going with like a more of a jade type armor here, which I think is cool. And then you can see she attaches like on a rock here, and then so I stamped the bases with my base stamp, and then but I think that's a pretty dang cool one-piece model with my addition of some basing and you know, just a standard good old-fashioned paint job on these. They're not like a totally hard plastic. They're like a little more of a rustic, like Guild Ball. I mean, sorry, like a board game pieces. So this is Flint here. So Flint's a little more of a, I don't know, he looks kind of Amish to me with the beard. I tried to paint a little bit of a mustache there, but it's just not showing up on camera. So he's got kind of a flesh-colored mustache. Here's the one that, well, a couple of ones that people complain about. You know, Harmony wasn't a great miniature in metal. And so honestly, this to me, this is an upgrade. Like this Harmony has a neck. You know, her pose isn't great. She's like, with her hand out like that. Like, hey, what are you gonna do? But it works. You know, it's a reasonably good-looking miniature. You can see I just painted a real basic standard to the model, and I think she looks fantastic. She's going to look good on the board. But there were some concerns about harmony, and there's some concerns about this guy right here, Mallet, because he's probably the worst sculpt of the kickoff plastics is the translation of Mallet, because he was such a three-dimensional piece. He has a double-handed hold on his mallet, and the mallet actually had a little bit of a better shape to it. He was holding it forward, like he was holding it out in front of him with both hands, and he didn't have this weird, like, his kind of his foot stepping forward there is a little odd. But you can see even him, like, he's not that he's one of the most suspect sculpts, but you can paint him to look pretty cool, right? I'm okay with that. That's fine. It's a cool looking mallet. I'm okay with that. We'll look at some of the brewers. Obviously, well, before we move on to brewers, let me show you. It's really in there. Brick, who looks fantastic. Brick was like one of the best translations, especially because they add, he has a weapon now. He's like flailing a brick at you. It's not just he doesn't have just like 2-inch reach fists like the metal brick has. So brick is pretty cool. And then onto the brewers. Now, I painted 2 brewers teams before, so I've always kind of had issues figuring out exactly how I'm going to do this yellow, because I do a lot of yellow. Like a lot of people just do brewers in brown, or they'll even use greens and reds. Just make them a little more pure Scottish. I like that Friday here has her knife pointed down instead of the metal version, which has a knife just kind of like dancing on her hand, and it didn't do well as a sculpt. But I think this looks fine. Again, with these plastics, you can get some decent character in the faces, so they look okay. This one looks a little goth to me. The one I didn't like, and I'm honestly not a big fan of this sculpt to begin with, is Spigot. Even though I love the model, like he's got football legend, and I love that. So Spigot looks okay. You can see a big mold line there going down the side of his head. I tried to chop that up a little bit. It didn't work out so well. Scum worked out great. I don't know, really nothing to say there. Just a kitty. Tapper and Hooper. Tapper kind of has an interesting, again, they had to modify Tapper's pose a bit. It's just that, the bottom of his pole arm right there is a little interesting. I could have done a lot more. Like, you could paint tartans on these if you're into that, and you do great freehand. I do not, so I just skipped it entirely. And then obviously you have Hooper. Again, you can see a mold line there. So these are, did they take a hit from going metal to plastic? Yes, they did. They're not as intricate plastic, and for the breweries, you don't have all those like little kegs to glue on. Some of the models have them, but like, for example, Stave he had a ton of them, and you put a bunch of kegs here on his belt. Now this model though looks good. Like the bigger models, just like any other translation, when they go to plastics, the big models are the least affected, as long as they can figure out how to do the pose in one piece. And I think they did that just fine with Stave here. So I guess, well, let me show you. I totally forgot to show you guys marbles. Show you marbles. He looks okay. They look okay is what I'm going to say. They paint up just fine. They look great on the table, and that's what counts. This is, I don't think you're not going to really win painting competitions by painting the kickoff box set, but they do look quite good, is what I'm trying to say. They do look quite good, and you should be, at least me being a painter, I was fairly pleased with how they came out. So I think we're going to survive it. I think if Guild Ball moves to fully plastic, which it will, I think there's going to be, a hit in terms of some of the model quality, but I'm sure the limited edition stuff and the special sets and stuff are still going to be metal, multi-part metal or resin, and look fantastic. Okay, so overall, I'm extremely happy with Kickoff. I think it's a fantastic value for what you pay. I love that I now have a box. I just have a box, like a board game sized box, that has everything I need to play a good game of Guild Ball. And it's totally self-contained. The miniature gamers were used to having, wow, I need to change this paper. Miniature gamers are used to having, all their stuff in different components, different foam bags, and carrying cases and all that stuff. And it's nice to be able to have Guild Ball all boxed up the way you might have, say, Dread Ball or Blood Bowl or something like that. Something a little bit more like a true board game. I mean, you can't even really say that for Super Dungeon Explorer. Too many pieces for Super Dungeon Explorer, Ninja All-Stars, that kind of stuff. And I love those games. You just can't really transport them in that way. So anyway, let me change this paper real quick. There's no one tuned in right now, so this is going to take me just 60 seconds. Let me go ahead and take care of that right now. All right, thanks for the note, Tori. Okay, so there we go. Nice and clean green screen. You could like Photoshop, a moon landing or an ocean background or something right now. If I had a really cool effects editor, I could do stuff like that. I'm just drinking a little caffeine. Okay. So the project table is pretty full, and the project table gets full when there are lots of low priority projects on it. And low priority projects are usually stuff I'm either painting for me or stuff that isn't on a timeline for whatever reason. And so right now, what isn't on a timeline are these, is a set of Alchemists, okay? And I have a ton of them. I wonder if I should just pan out a little bit, or if we're just gonna, yeah, I guess we're okay. We don't need to pan out. So I just started these the other night, and you can see I got an airbrush color down, and I'm starting to do some of the flesh here. You can see the flesh on this guy looks really ragged, and I'm going to smooth that out and blend it out by actually toning it, because the list is a really interesting model. He's pumped up full of all kinds of weird chemicals and stuff to make his body gigantic. So we'll be seeing more like that. But spent last night mostly doing all the skin stuff, the faces. There's Calculus. Her eyes look gigantic on screen. But yeah, that's her. Yeah, her eye looks huge. I don't know. I don't have a problem with it. Whatever. It's a little cartoony, but whatever. Um, and here's Smoke. Now, Smoke is supposed to have dark hair. I don't. I think it looks weird. I think it looks weird mainly for the fact that you have her hair kind of flowing at the bottom of her chin, so it's like she has a beard in some ways, which is interesting. Then you got this dude here, Mercury. Reminds me of Mario for some reason. I'm a Mario. Uh, and you got Vitriol, which you can see the bumps on her head. That's actually like hair. It's like braids. So we got to come back and paint those in. But this flesh right now is looking a little chalky. So I'm probably going to apply some washes to these flesh tones. Here's the big guy, Midas. He looks like he looks kind of angry right now. So I'm just gonna, the goal isn't to finish painting these. We're just gonna do a bit of painting to pass some time. And then this is probably gonna be a very short feed because I just, I'm just bored. I just need to fun painting at this point. And this is probably, I would normally advise against doing this kind of batch painting where you're painting an entire, by the way, Crucible, cool model. Very cool model. But yeah, I advise against doing this kind of batch painting, but I do it because I don't know. It's kind of satisfying when you see the whole thing finish at the same time and you've blended all the colors correctly so that you're not making a mistake. There's regular season 1 Catalyst, which I'm a big fan of. Then you got this guy here, Compound. You got Venom. And then I have the 2 mascots, which we will not be working on tonight. Nausea, which I don't even really understand this mascot. I don't think it's a very good mascot, looking at the rules. But then again, I don't run Venom, so what do I know? And then you got Flask, who I think is a great mascot. Big fan of Flask. Johnny 5. Okay. So that's what we're working on tonight. We're going to be working on these Alchemists, and we're going to need to pick some greens. But before we do that, let's go ahead and apply some flesh wash because I think that will help. And I'm going to make a glaze out of the flesh wash so that the flesh wash is really mild. Okay, I want this flesh wash to be fairly mild, and I want it to leave a little bit, just a little bit of a sheen on the models because, like I said, the skin, I was using Reaper flesh tones, and Reaper flesh tones end up looking a little chalky because they dry so flat. It's great that they dry flat, don't get me wrong, but sometimes, especially with skin tones, you don't want your skin to look completely dry. It looks weird. Skin should have just ever slightly a slight angular sheen to it, if that makes any sense. It's just, some skin is greasy. I spilled a little water there. Okay. So yeah, before things get too serious, we're gonna go ahead and make ourselves a glaze out of flesh wash, right? So I'm gonna do like 4 drops of glaze, and I'm gonna find my flesh wash somewhere. If you're just joining the program, welcome to Play It Painted Live. Again, this is a little bit more of a free-form hangout stream, so if you are interested in hanging out and you got something you want to get off your chest, now is the time. We are opening it up. This is a hangout. I can send you an invite. Okay. So right now we're just going to be painting up another Alchemist guild. I think this is the third or possibly even the fourth Alchemist team that I've painted. I don't remember exactly. I can recall 2 that I've done before this, but I don't remember if I had a third that was done before this. So you can see, just applying the flesh wash there on the face. And it should look like I've done almost nothing to it. That's kind of what I'm hoping for. Okay, because it's going to impart just a little bit of sheen to it and put some believability into the skin. Okay. For whatever reason, when I'm doing stuff like skin and stuff, I always do the ladies first, and I don't really know why. It just makes sense to me that way. I always do the female models first. There we go. So now vitriol starting to look better. Get a little bit better detail out of her. A little less chalkiness. Yeah. And smoke. This one's a little tricky because the face is so well buried there. You don't want to do too much shading, because then it'll like get into the eyes and it'll mess up the shape of the mouth and all this other stuff. So I'll just do that. So since nobody's hopping on, I will go ahead and get a couple things off my chest. So I don't think this is going to be a rant, so don't worry. I don't think this is, we're not going to freak out like I do sometimes on this feed. But I do want to cover, just include some observations on a couple of things that I watched recently. Okay. And there's going to be good parts and bad parts. Okay. So just bear that in mind. So the first thing I want to talk about is over this past weekend, I watched X-Men Apocalypse. Okay, so my wife wanted to watch it. You know, she pulled it up on our HBO, whatever that's called now, like our Cox Boomerang HBO special package deal thing, where you can just pull up, you just pull it up on demand and watch it. And she wanted to watch Apocalypse. So I was like, okay, let's watch Apocalypse. And so we started to watch it. I had very, very low expectations of Apocalypse, mainly because it didn't get good reviews, for one. And I have not really liked the Fox treatment of X-Men as a whole. I did not like what they've done with X-Men, and even like Days of Future Past was supposed to really clean all this up, and First Class and all this other stuff. And don't get me wrong, those were noble efforts, but they didn't really, for me, they didn't really grab me. I'm like, okay, so you didn't make it a complete disaster. That's kind of how I looked at that. So when they announced they were doing Apocalypse, cool, okay, whatever. And one of the thing that was really driving me nuts about Apocalypse is online, all of the advertising for Apocalypse was one specific scene that they kept like showing over and over again. Like, I think it became like a GIF, right? Of what's her name? I forget her name now. The one that plays Psylocke, Olivia Munn. Olivia Munn playing Psylocke and like flipping being in the air and like cutting this car in half, right? That's all I saw. That's all I saw from Apocalypse prior to the movie was that, and then the controversial poster that had Apocalypse, holding Mystique by her throat. And the all the sensitive people that got triggered over that, like, oh, how dare you? This is, a negative light. Well, that's called struggle, right? You don't present the challenge of the movie and say X-Men. His name is the subtitle of the movie, right? You're supposed to feel threatened by Apocalypse. If it was X-Men Apocalypse and they had, basically Jennifer Lawrence standing over the body of Apocalypse, would you go watch that movie? No, no one would watch that movie. Okay, so calm yourself. They're going to show challenging photos. They're going to show photos of, is she going to make it to the end of the movie? Because if you're thinking that, watching that, looking at that photo, then the photo has done its job. Okay, so calm your tits is what I like to say. It's really funny. Whatever. If I offended you by saying that, good. Okay. So anyway, that's all there was online for X-Men Apocalypse, really. And so I had really, really low expectations, and for the several reasons that I just pointed out. And I started to watch it, and okay, Apocalypse is on the scene, yada yada, and they're building all this backstory for Jean Grey, Scott Summers. Scott Summers is on the scene, and they present Havoc as like a good guy, like a good, the good big brother, and all this other stuff, where he was not really portrayed that way when he was in the comics. I think that the first appearance of Havoc, he was already on the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, or guys, in other words, and that's fine. It's okay. They're going to change stuff. It's cool. But there was stuff that I liked, stuff that I didn't like off the bat. The Scott Summers character, I felt, I did not really like him, nor was I interested in his character. Now, Scott Summers in the comic book, historically, wasn't that interesting a character. I mean, he came out and he was more of an archetypal leader type. He was confident and he was bold, and he was a little more stoic when he first came out, and then as they started to write him more, he became a little more tragic, particularly in his with his relationship with Jean. So you had that going on, but in this version, they had Scott come in and as really kind of frail and meek and fairly pathetic. Now that alone I wouldn't take issue with. Like, that's fine. The film wants him to follow a specific arc, and I guess that's okay, right? The thing is, they bring Jean Grey on at the same time. They essentially swap personalities from where they were in the comic book, and it just, to me, it's harder to buy on film, knowing what we know about Jean Grey and about Scott Summers. It was an interesting choice by the writing team to, well, let's present Scott Summers as kind of the meek younger brother, which again, I don't really have a problem with. The problem I have is, they want to do Phoenix, and specifically they want to do Dark Phoenix. And to me, if you're going to do Phoenix, you really need to contrast the character of Jean Grey with the Phoenix, okay? Because these are two very, very different entities, and it's a huge part of what makes Phoenix and the Dark Phoenix saga interesting. Why am I doing this? This is wrong. I'll fix it. Why are they, it's what makes that whole dynamic really interesting, right? So uh, Jean Grey in the comic book, and sorry, I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to compare it to the comic book. How dare I, right? Um, Jean Grey in the comic book is a fairly meek character when she comes out. She's definitely, and you can blame some of this too. If you're socially conscious person, you can blame some of that on, the kind of how society regarded the female character at the time. She was a support character. As far as the original 5 X-Men are concerned, Jean Grey came out and she was just sort of a telekinetic with mild telepathic ability, right? And she was a fairly uninteresting character. She was a fairly flat character in the early comic. She was just sort of a, hey, I'm here to support and do my job as well. And she was kind of a meek character. So they flipped that in the movie, which shouldn't be a problem most of the time. But the issue, again, I have with it is that you're going to be bringing the Phoenix into this movie. And if you already have a Jean Grey, because Jean Grey in this movie is seems to be in control. She's always wise. She's always kind of knowing what's going on, at least more than the characters around her. And it didn't play for me. It didn't play for me. I want to see this shy, awkward, uh, you know, kind of a meager Jean Grey character, and I want to see her like explode and become the Phoenix and be this thing that people don't understand and fear. But instead, in the movie, everybody already kind of knows how powerful Jean is, and especially obviously towards the end of the movie, then they really know how powerful she is. But it just wasn't it wasn't the big jump. Okay, you didn't have the Evil Knievel going off the giant ramp. In other words, so you had those two characters, which, in my opinion, the the story works out so much better if Scott is the confident, controlled leader character, and to have when you do, because I'm assuming they are going to break out the Dark Phoenix saga, that when they do break out the Dark Phoenix saga, that you do get this role reversal, that like Scott is like put on his ass, and he assumed he was one of the stronger characters in the X-Men. He assumed he was this natural fit leader, golden boy type thing, and instead the Phoenix comes out, and now he's like, wow, I'm really not in control of this situation. Hey, what's up, Blade Wolf? That's what I wanted to see. That's what I wanted to see. Instead, we get this Jean Grey who's already kind of strong, and then right. So most of the complaints I'm going to have with X-Men Apocalypse are going to be characterization, and and again, if you follow the comic books, I think you're going to be on the same page, if not more so than I am. Because I get it. It's a 2-hour movie. It's a 2-hour movie, and they cram. And here's another one of my general complaints: is that they cram so much into this movie that it's just sort of this Frankenstein plot, and nothing's really allowed to be strong in the movie, and you put it all together, and it's almost like the pizza that had too many toppings on it. And I know some people will think that's blasphemy, but I do think it's like it's excess. There's too many parts, and there's too many. They're trying to do too much in that space, and you end up with. I liken it to those when you were younger and you used to go to the game shop. You miniature guys are going to be on board for this analogy, I hope. But you go to the game shop, right? And everybody played 40K back in the day. And, and you're like, and you're around, you're there with your 2 or 3 friends, and you're like, hey, you know what would be cool? Let's play a 45,000 point game. You're like, wow, that'd be so cool. That'll allow me to field all my cool stuff. I'll put on all the toys and all the options and put them on the table. It's going to be so much fun, right? In theory, in your mind, you think it's going to be, you think more is better. You think putting more out there is better. So you put all this crap on the table, first turn, and then 4 hours later, you're still on the first turn. You know what I mean? This is before Apocalypse rules. Frankly, I think Apocalypse just sprang from this. It sprang from this bad idea of let's just keep putting more stuff on the table because more is fun. And then, you know, some of us that like more controlled strategic games realize the skirmish games actually do it a lot better. You know, the skirmish games are like, if you want a good tight game, here you go. Play 6 Guild Ball models. You know, there you go. That's an awesome game. X-Men Apocalypse tried to do that. I feel like they tried to put too much in the one movie, and it just at the end of it, the day, they didn't manage to get to do anything of quality. I'll say, okay. So you had the Scott Summers, Jean Grey. Then you had Nightcrawler in there, who, you know, he had a bit part, he had a side part, and they did that part correct because that's what that's what he is on the team. He's the side character. He is the, you know, in some cases he's comic relief, and he's a support character. Interestingly, he gets a lot of the shit done that, you know, the quote unquote primary characters can't get done. Obviously, they use a lot of teleport in the movie, and which is cool. But I think that's fan driven or plot driven. I think the writers are like, oh, that was so cool. You know, that was the best part of whatever X-Men 2. I forget what it's called. I forget what X-Men 2 was called. I don't care. Yeah, I don't care enough about it to fuss over it. But anyway, yeah. So there's a lot of Nightcrawler in the movie, but he, you know, the amount of characterization that he gets is fine for him. Okay. I'm trying to figure out. Here's my problem with greens. How do I jump here? This looks like an okay jump. We'll see. I may have to put some gray in this green, and that's kind of breaking my heart a little bit. I need like almost more of a jade color. Let's see what I got. Oh yeah. I mean, foul green should work. It's just not. I need it to be a little more intense. Maybe if I mixed them. Maybe if I mix deep green. Let's have a look. Oh, X-Men 2, X2, X-Men United. Yeah, wasn't a great movie. But, you know, that Nightcrawler scene in the beginning, everybody loved that scene. And so it was like, these writers are like, oh, we totally need to, you know, cash in on that because that was so successful. Okay, so you had that going on. You had so many characters. Mystique, I did not like what they did with Mystique, although I understand. The studio was like, look, we get J Law as a character in this movie, and we better ride that cash cow as hard as we can because that's a payoff, right? So we better do something with J Law here. And I get that, but the character doesn't make sense. Well, they basically just made her the Cyclops character. They made her the Cyclops character and rewrote the canon around that. Again, but we're still not at critical fail yet until we start to talk about what I saw, which is I'm watching like Katniss Everdeen again. Like, oh, she was so good as Katniss, and she's a strong female character. And I get that we want to have strong female characters in the movies, but it's the same character. That's the problem I had with uh, with Mystique slash Raven. Was she really Raven? Like, was she really? She was supposed to be kind of on the outskirts, like kind of an outlaw at the start of the movie. But was she really? She just didn't. She doesn't convince me. She does not. And maybe it's J Law herself. But it, I don't buy it. I don't buy that that character is supposed to be this outlaw type character. I don't buy that. It did not work for me. So I guess what I'm saying is, I had an issue with that character. It just, again, I think they missed the mark on that character. Am I doing this right? I don't even know. Well, that green's okay. Looks like the deep green is going to work pretty well. It's hiding better than I thought it would. So yeah, they didn't do. It's just a weird fit there. Like, okay, we're gonna make Mystique, who, she lived her early characterization was around, sort of. She was unfortunately sort of a control piece between, Xavier and Magneto, right? She was kind of the, oh well, she was down with Charles in the beginning, and then she started to listen more uh, to Eric, and then back to Charles, and now she's an independent person. She thinks for herself, and she chooses what side she's going to be on at any given point. Cool, that's cool, but you didn't get to see much of her being the shadowy kind of, you didn't really get to see much of the criminal element of Mystique in the movie. In fact, she almost never really shape changes. She only uses her powers a couple of times, and granted, I mean, there are critical times that she uses them during the movie, but I almost felt like I was just watching Katniss there. Like they could have just said, they could have been calling her Katniss during all this stuff, and I would have totally bought that. So then you had that character, right? Katniss. I was calling her Mystiquing Jay when I was watching the movie. I'm like, oh, Mystiquing Jay, she's gonna win the Hunger Games again. When I was watching the movie, so yeah. So anyway, so you had that. Again, another characterization I didn't like. Then you had, so let's move over to the bad guys, because I got to rip on them too. So so then you go to the other side of the fence, and then you've got Apocalypse, and you get the Four Horsemen. Okay, so Apocalypse he was okay, but at no point was I ever like buying that this was really that much of a threat, and I totally should have. I mean, they did a good job explaining, hey, he's a god. You can see his, they put his powers on full display and all this other stuff. So they did their job of trying to convince me that Apocalypse is a badass. It just didn't work for me. I don't know. It's hard for me to put my finger on that. But that's not really what I'm going to complain about. I'm going to complain about the Horsemen, because I really don't see much point to the Horsemen, right? Let me explain this. So the Horsemen, you had, I believe the first Horseman that they bring on is they bring on Storm. right? And then it was kind of cool because they did a little bit of the Morlock stuff, and I'm like, oh, cool, the Morlocks and whatever. So I thought that was kind of cool. I thought we were gonna run a little bit more with that than we did. And they bring Storm on, Aurora. You don't get to see much of her at first. They really didn't give her much justice, again, because they're trying to do too much in the one movie. So you get to see her, right? So they bring her on, and you're like, yay, Storm. Then they bring on Psylocke, and you're like, well, Psylocke was a mess kind of to begin with, because they didn't do the original Psylocke character. They didn't do the Irish character who had the mutant brother, and then that's what the comic character was. And then they essentially just split up the Psylocke character and just let Moira McTaggart kind of be her own deal there. And then they just kind of brought this Psylocke on. So already nothing about her. There's no characterization to be had. They just sort of, hey, become a horseman because you use two swords. Like, I don't understand. It, to me, it's like Apocalypse didn't really pick his horseman, did he? He just sort of, like, whoever he ran into, but you're a horseman now. I don't know what to do about that. That's just kind of sad, because his first three actually are all pretty sad. You had you had Psylocke and Storm, and he basically just sort of made them, right? Then you had the one that really kind of bugged me, which was Angel, notably Archangel, okay? And so to give you an idea how old I am, I was reading X-Men at the time that they killed off Angel. They killed the original Angel, and it was really messed up. And I loved it. I loved it because I always thought Angel was just such a suck character. And back then, Marvel would do this cool thing where they would take, kind of subpar, low popularity characters like Angel, and then they would revamp them and rebuild them and make them more interesting. And case in point, you had Psylocke, and Psylocke, as I think I can't remember if she's Scottish or Irish, but she was basically just a telepath, and she did the little she had the like pink outfit, and she did the little psionic butterfly thing. It was okay, but it was a fairly subpar character. It wasn't until they kind of rebuilt her and basically put her in the body of a ninja. Actually, they literally did that Psylocke really kind of came into her own, right? It wasn't until they did that Psylocke really became a cool character, and to the point where today you tell people Psylocke, picture most people, only like the more diehard guys are even going to remember that Psylocke was that lavender outfitted girl with the brown hair that fired the little butterfly things, right? No one's even really gonna buy that. But that was the cool thing that Marvel did back then, is that they revamped crap characters, which is the exact opposite of what they do now, which is they revamp good characters. Anyway, so with Archangel, though, because the comic book allowed you to really get into the down in the dumps with Warren, right? Right before the dude, like, he loses his wings, he loses his fortune, he goes up into his plane and basically blows himself up, right? And you're like, okay, that's the end of Angel, and what a tragic freaking end that is, right? And you're like, wow, that's Marvel got some balls, man. They that to one of the oldest X-Men. But Apocalypse harnesses all of that pain and all that suffering that Warren had to Archangel, and that's a really cool thing. That was a really cool thing to do in the comic books. Instead of that, on screen, they just like show up. Hey, we want to meet this dude, and then he jumps down from the rafter, and it's like, "Hi, I'm a guy. Hi, I'm Apocalypse," and then they made him Archangel. So you didn't get like they basically shot any hope of putting together that really cool, really tragic story of how he becomes Archangel, and that just sucked. You're like, wow, we didn't even get to be there. Really, he just went straight from having perfectly fine wings to, let's just make him Billy Idol with Archangel. He started to look a little bit more like Archangel. Progressed, but again, what a missed opportunity there to do something really kind of cool, in my opinion. Right? Just in my opinion, and it were a big miss for me. Add to the fact that if you're paying attention to the end of the movie, the last fight, there's all these undercard fights that are just completely meaningless. Like, right? So the fourth horseman, obviously, is Magneto, and it's an Apocalypse, plays the psychological game, Magneto, to give him his chance to realize the world that Eric envisions, and he plays off of that, and it's cool and it works, right? And so, and Magneto has a specific, he has a specific role in Apocalypse plan. So he makes sense. When you watch the end and you realize, hey, you have Magneto basically pulling up all the stuff from Earth and just wrecking it. Then you have Xavier that's going to go through I'm sorry, I'm like totally spoiling this movie, but it's old and hopefully no one cares. Then you have Xavier, who was kidnapped, and he turns out to have a more important role than any of the horsemen, because essentially Apocalypse is like, I want to be you, brah, and takes over that. Then you have the other three horsemen, who at the end, their job is to do what? Oh, you know what you should do? You have two swords. You control weather, which is something they totally could have used. They totally could have used storm a little bit more than they did. And you can fly and shoot your feathers at people in painful ways. Like, what was Apocalypse's plan? Like, other than Magneto and Xavier, what did the other horsemen really do? Because I can't figure it out. Like, what? Why did he pick them? I think he just sort of ran into them. And he's like, "Hey, man, be on my team, bro," and he like pugged it and recruited them. It didn't make sense. Didn't buy it, and it, again, in the end, it just led to this really kind of dumb, anticlimactic battle. You had Storm versus you had Storm and Psylocke versus Beast, Cyclops. Who else was on that team? Beast, Cyclops, Nightcrawler, who ends up fighting Archangel. Oh man, you had Jubilee at the beginning of the movie, who does what? Like, I can't even figure out what Jubilee. You're like, hey, it's Jubilee, and then life just moves on. Oh, and then you have Quicksilver on the team again. Somebody that really wasn't part of these events, kind of like Mystique, that the studio has said, hey, these guys performed really well for the audience in the previous movie. Let's bring them back. I can see why they did what they did, but it just doesn't. It's still not the best thing, in my opinion, right? Who cares what the best thing is, right? Who cares? You just enjoy the movie, they said. But anyway, so you had these undercard fights that made no sense, and then on the other side of that, neither did the other characters really contribute to anything. If you look at that final fight, who is really involved? You had, from a literal standpoint, on Apocalypse side, you had Xavier, who is going through the kidnapped Xavier, who's going through the transformation. You had Magneto, who is really enacting the destruction of the world. He's the only horseman really doing that. And then on the other side, you had basically Quicksilver and Mystique. Their job was to talk nicely to Magneto. That was their job. They had to talk nicely to Magneto. Magneto, please don't do it. No, like that. What they did. That's what they did with the superhero. Like that. So you had that going on. Then you had Jean Grey and Nightcrawler, who were doing the actual business of preventing the body transformation, the body transfer, I guess, of Apocalypse, right? So those two are getting shit done. Meanwhile, all the other quote unquote main characters are just sort of a, hey, let's fight because why not type thing. That's what it boiled down to. That's what it boiled down to. So X-Men Apocalypse, to me, was about, it should just be called X-Men Side Characters Get Shit Done. Main characters, blah, not so much. Horsemen, nah. Horsemen not getting anything done. Other than Horsemen, getting stuff done. Right? This was Apocalypse's grand plan. Let's blow it up. I'm going to trade bodies. He didn't even realize, he didn't plan on catching Xavier. That was accidental. They kicked on Cerebro. Still one of the funniest names, I think. That wasn't part of his. What was his actual plan? If he didn't have Xavier, if he didn't discover, hey, this dude can be everywhere at once, what was he going to do? We'll use Magneto to blow shit up, and these other three guys will walk around and sword people. What are you going to do with Psylocke? That Psylocke, by the way, not even really a psionic. She's just, she has a blade. She has a regular blade, and then she has a side blade. Really? That's all they're going to use her for. Anyway. So, yeah. So I had some issues with it. That said, let's talk about some shit that I thought was really cool in the movie. And it was all the small stuff. It was all the undercard stuff I really liked. And again, spoiler alert, because I'm talking about, stuff in the movie that's really cool. Let's talk about it. Obviously, the Quicksilver scene in Days of Future Past was such a hit that you knew the studio was going to try to figure out how to recycle that in some way, right? So what do? I know. The point at which they blow up the school, let's have Quicksilver single-handedly save every single person involved, at the school. Well, except for one. One person doesn't get saved. But let's do that, because that scene really played in the previous movie. The studio's like, yeah, we better do that, and actually let's take it up a notch. I understand it's pandering to the audience. I understand from a plot standpoint, It's all kind of dumb, but it played with me, and I enjoyed the scene, and it was cool. And it had this time you got the Eurythmics playing, um, as he's saving everybody in the school. So that part's cool. But and again, Quicksilver does more in the movie as he's more of a side character, but he accomplishes more in the movie, definitely more than Scott Summers does, and definitely more than from a physical standpoint, he does a lot more than Mystique does. And that's why I'm calling, X-Men Apocalypse. X-Men side characters get shit done. Main characters, not so much. So, so you had that scene, right? That was one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie. It was a lot of people came back and told me, oh yeah, that's the best scene in their opinion of the whole movie. And I'm going to agree. It's one of the best scenes. Okay. The other scene, and again, spoiler alert, the other scene I really liked, even though it was completely unnecessary, or all but unnecessary, was the Logan cameo. Now it's cool, all that set in motion. The whole plot with Weapon X and Logan, and sure enough, your man Hugh Jackman comes out and he does his thing. And what I really liked about it was, one, it's kind of a prelude to the kind of violence and stuff that happens in Logan. But I really liked that it was, like, for me, that was like a 15-minute horror movie baked into an X-Men movie. And I was like, man, when I watched that scene, I was like, they should have just made a whole movie on that. Would have been really cool to have a Logan origin story that had that kind of balls instead of what we got from the Logan origin story. So you had that. But again, they could have chose not to include it, but it was one of those Frankenstein pieces that played to the audience, that people liked. It was a fun surprise. But again, so much going on. And if you look at that rescue operation, you can logically say that Jean Grey and Logan did the bulk of the work there, breaking out, the other characters. So yeah, I really like that part. So, X-Men Apocalypse, not a good movie, my opinion. Overall, not a good movie. Too much stuff wrong with it. I really, really don't like what Fox has done with the X-Men franchise as a whole. Kind of bothers me. And I'm not a fan of it. I can see why Marvel is trying to get all the mutants killed off in their comics. Owns all that stuff on the theater. So, a bit disappointed, but it's still better than I thought it was going to be because my expectations were that low. So, but if you take those two scenes out, you take the Quicksilver scene out, and you take the Logan cameo, and it's an awful movie. It's a terrible. I just think that's a terrible movie. I have a hard time getting into superhero movies as it is. And these guys aren't doing me. These superhero team up movies are not doing me any favors. They're childish. They're sloppily written. Is sloppily a word? I don't care. I'm using it. They just don't do it for me. And all they end up doing is frustrating me. It's like, well, you have all this cast. You could do something really cool. When I see a big, cool ensemble cast that works well. I think in terms of Ocean's 11, right? The Ocean's 11 franchise, actually, if maybe you only like the first movie, I don't know. But they do a good job of taking all that talent that they're going to put on the screen, that they're going to put up on the screen at the same time. They can take all that talent and do a reasonably good job giving you what you want, giving you enough of each character to be invested and to be on board, right? Well, it'd be great if these X-Men writers could figure out how to do that. But I'm not holding my breath. So they should call it X-Men Sidekicks Shine Time. Agree. Yeah, X-Men, other guys get shit done. So now they've got it set up to they can do the Phoenix and Dark Phoenix sagas. Fox can do it their way, which is cool, I guess. But I mean, they just haven't, in my opinion, they haven't taken enough care of the lore to be trusted with such a beloved story arc in comic book history, right? Again, I'm going to tell you how old I am. Uncanny X-Men, when all that shit went down, when Dark Phoenix Saga went down, and it blew my effing mind. And it was awesome. But there's so much backstory that goes into that goes into the Phoenix Saga, and it's so far removed from anything that Fox has attempted to do on screen that no, they're not even, when they get to Dark Phoenix, it's not even going to be close. When they did it with the original trilogy, the Famke Jensen Phoenix character, that was awful. That was that was such a terrible, I would say disrespectful thing that they did with that saga. And now it looks like they're going to try to do it with Sophie Turner, right? Is that her name, Sophie Turner? Who, if I'm being honest with you, I don't know if she can pull off that kind of duality. I haven't seen, and her character on Game of Thrones, Sansa, hasn't really been challenged for that kind of stretch. She hasn't been challenged for that kind of depth. So I don't know if Sophie Turner can do it or not. Also, I have my doubts about whether or not the Fox writing team can actually pull off a believable Dark Phoenix saga. I'm very, very skeptical of that. But we'll see. There's a lot of really cool potential there for Dark Phoenix. Dark Phoenix, I think, Dark Phoenix is just such a cool character. She's ridiculously powerful. She's arrogant. And she's everything that Jean Grey isn't. And I would love to see that done properly on screen. Do I think it's going to happen? No. I would bet a significant amount of money that they don't do a good job with Dark Phoenix. I just don't see it. I don't see how they would be able to do that. And you guys tell me if you think I'm wrong there. But I think my doubts are well justified here. I just don't see that. So, X-Men Apocalypse this past weekend. So today, I was bored. I got home from work, and I was watching on Netflix. I was watching the the anime, The Seven Deadly Sins, season 2, right? Because I watched Seven Deadly Sins, the first. Yeah, they should stop making X-Men. They should give it back to Marvel so that Marvel can do a good job with it. But they're never going to do that. X-Men is a cash cow for Fox, and they need some way of making all the money back that they keep blowing on Spider-Man and and Fantastic Four. Sorry, Spider-Man's back with Marvel, but Fantastic Four spends all the money that X-Men makes, because that's not a good movie. Anyway, so I was watching Seven Deadly Sins season 2. Don't watch it. It's not good. Don't watch that. It's not even a season. It's, first of all, Seven Deadly Sins wasn't a very good anime to begin with. Let's be honest. It was a mediocre at best anime for Netflix. I liked it because it had certain interesting aspects to it. It had the shonen component that I really liked. And I really like this whole idea of like knights and demons and all this stuff and fighting, right? I like all that stuff. Put me down. I like that stuff. And I was like, okay, I'll watch season 2. So season 2, Seven Deadly Sins, was not a season, and it didn't have a storyline. It was the most non-thing that I watched since Rosario Vampire season 2. What a nightmare that was. That was an awful, awful season 2. Some anime season 2s are just like, hey, we need more money, and they don't give you anything at all. They don't give you anything of value for that. But this isn't even what I'm going to discuss next. The only point I was trying to make there is do not watch. Well, you can if you want. Here's the other downside to Seven Deadly Sins season 2. It's only 4 episodes. How do you call that a season? How do you call 4 episodes that don't advance the plot line? You're just sort of watching endgame material. That's not a season. So anyway, don't watch that, right? So I get to the end of the fourth episode of Seven Deadly Sins. I'm like, okay, ready for episode 5. Suddenly, 5, right? Netflix kicks me out and says, oh, up next, Iron Fist. All right. So before we get into this, I am not going to go into that rant that I did previously. So we're going to be okay, right? It's not going to do it. Don't worry, guys. We did that already. You guys saw that already on this feed. Not going to do that anymore. Okay. So this is not about that specific rant. It came on, and so I was like, okay, I better watch it. I wanted so bad to watch Iron Fist when it was first announced and it first started to come out. But the problem with me is I'll watch early reviews and all that stuff. I don't care about getting spoiled stuff. In fact, I've read the Game of Thrones season spoilers where they spoil the entire season and they're like 99% accurate on everything. I've read and watched all that stuff, and it's fine. I can still enjoy, the season of Game of Thrones. So spoilers don't really bother me. What bothered me in this case is I was watching the spoilers for Iron Fist, and I watched some of the fight scenes. And man, are those embarrassing. So some of the fight scenes, I was like, you know what? I don't need to watch that. That doesn't, I'm watching Iron Fist to watch Kung Fu. I want to watch excellent Kung Fu. I don't need to, even if they botch the story in places, which I know they will, if the Kung Fu is good, it's a good show. It's worth watching. It's Iron Fist. That's what the fans of Iron Fist love, is shocker, they're going to love Kung Fu. but I watched the spoiled uh, the spoiled action scenes and was gravely disappointed in what I saw. Gravely disappointed. So so anyway, so I wasn't gonna watch it. So here it comes. It's on my screen now. Seven Deadly Sins season 2, total bust. I'm like, okay, you know what? This enough. It's time to watch this kid tell his dad he's not going to do hamster style anymore. Right? For those of you that get that reference. So so I put it on, and I watched so far. This was earlier today, so I've only watched 1.25 episodes, and so far, not impressed. Not impressed. Not I. People are like, "Oh, it's Iron Fist. You'll get into it. You'll get into the story." I liked some people are saying they liked the early episodes, which is scaring the crap out of me, because if they liked that episode and said, "Oh yeah, this is going to be a good series," I got some real concerns about their judgment at this point, because that am I still going to finish watching it? Of course I am, because now that I've started it, now I need to see the whole thing through so that I can then rant about it. The Real Ghostbusters 1990 is on Netflix. That's cool. Yeah. So, you had Finn. I just started to tear apart immediately because, it's, again, uh, this is East meets West. And I just keep thinking about a kid that, spent the last 15 whatever years, with monks training Kung Fu, just wouldn't be acting like this Danny Rand is. And it's just nothing, so far, nothing remarkable happening. It's a fish out of water story, hometown boy comes home trying to do good type thing. I'm not on board with the story. It's not interesting enough for me. The portrayal of Danny Rand interesting enough for me. Because to me he's like, and I'm gonna go there, but he's written like, assertive character, right? Kind of pushing his way through things, want to do the good and the right in society, and he just doesn't show me much Eastern humility or discipline. And you're like, dude, he studied Kung Fu in Kunlun. Can we at least um, like give some sort of nod as to like what his Eastern approach would be to things like, encountering the the rival family that's in control of the Rand Corporation and all that stuff. Would love to see that. If they brought if they did a David Carradine, like a Kane from Kung Fu thing, where he's like, yeah, you could totally tell this is a Western guy. They were trying to make. I get, I get what they're trying to do there, but you can. For me, I'm like, okay, that's a Western guy, but you can totally tell, like, this guy's got Eastern philosophy flowing through him, and Danny Rand didn't have that for me. I was like, he's a regular dude, like, oh, and he can do a couple of Steven Seagal. Not so, bottom line, not that interested. Doesn't look very promising to me. And it has nothing to do with race. Actually Asian, then the story makes no sense at all. So, and again, that earlier. So, anyway, so those are the things that I've been watching lately. I am glad that I at least started Iron Fist, and I'll continue to watch it. Um, but we'll see. It just right now it doesn't look great. It doesn't look very interesting. Changes. It's the story's not. The story has to make up for the lack of cool kung fu things I was hoping to see. And so far, it's not doing. It's not making good on either front for me. So that's bad. So, yeah. So now that I'm thoroughly disappointed with TV and movies for the moment, I don't know. I need to I need to pick an anime to watch and get into. That will help. There's a new season of Attack on Titan that I should probably watch at some point. I forgot what else I was trying to watch. I started Death Note over again just because I want to be refreshed with the anime Death Note before I start watching the Netflix series. So you got that. Yeah. Been watching Tiger Mask, but that's my type of show. You know what I want to watch now that I'm thinking about it? What would be awesome to watch would be Outlander. I think that's a cool looking show. I totally want to watch that. What? Okay, I got to figure out what is what does she kind of look like again? Calculus. I'm gonna flip through the cards here. Mercury. There's calculus. Pretty. They do them pretty boring. Browns and green. The only thing that's green on her is the tabard there. Let's see. I can do a little more green than that. In fact, maybe I should do the stitched pants. Yeah, I'm going to do the pants green actually, and then the tabard I'll do more of this like noxious poison color. So I'll probably apply an ink or something on that tabard. And we'll go with green. Oh, well, that's a boot. Those don't need to be green. Death Note's another one that I'm worried about. Someone posted maybe a veteran salt. Not sure if it's real. Veteran salt would be hilarious. Yeah, I'm gonna need an anime to get into. Help pass the time here. Yeah, I think this calculus is gonna look better with the little green pants as opposed to the green tabard. And let's do green belts here. Currently working on the sear with airbrush. Nice. I love my Wrath of Kings. One day I will build my Technus army. Ooh. Okay. Yeah, I need more deep green. Is this all we're going to be able to get done tonight? Maybe just the deep green? Maybe. I spent too much time talking trash. That's okay. I don't really care. Let's try to get it blocked. Let's try to get the green. We can get the green and the browns done. I'll be pretty happy with that. So I guess next up is going to be Smoke. Smoke has got a lot of green on her. Notably the hood. The hood. Wondering if I should airbrush only the cloth and then paint the mask and metal parts with brush. I forgot how I did mine this year. I know I did a lot of airbrush and then just came back and hit the details. Although I think, if I recall correctly, when I did Nasir, I airbrushed a lot of the I airbrushed a lot of the reds that I used. Looks like she kind of has this hood and a couple of streamers here off the hood. And she's also wearing like a corset below. And then she's got this tabard here. Should definitely be green in the center. Like that. And then she also has this area here that should also be green. I really do like Alchemists. They're one of my favorite teams in Guild Ball. The main reason why I not kept an Alchemist team, I tried to, but the main reason is my main opponent plays Alchemist, so it doesn't make sense for me to keep an Alchemist team unless I'm really into playing mirror matches, which I'm not. All right, so with Ven in here, I think what we'll do is it's going to be pretty straightforward. His top shirt here will be green. And his, well, no, his mask will not be green. Unless I paint this in and go, oh, his mask needs to be green. I think it's about as simple as it gets. I'll paint his headband green, though. Oops. There's like this whole area back there. I picked up Rogue One on Blu-ray. I still need to watch that. I still have not watched Rogue One. one day I will care enough to watch it. Jose will try to make me watch it, so I think he'll be successful at some point, and I'll watch it. I was told by some fairly reliable sources that I'd actually like it, but very skeptical about that. So we'll see. At some point, I will commit to watching it. Still have a bad taste in my mouth over episode 7. Because, not really. Star Wars franchise, not really doing anything for me. And I'm sorry if that offends the Star Wars fans that watch, but that's just, I'm just being honest. To me, Star Wars appears to be a very, very flat story. And especially the modern ones. I don't like the characters. I don't like the new characters that they have in Star Wars. I think that Darth Vader's his shoes are too big to fill. So there's that. So I don't know. All right. Next we got our lady here. And I have no idea. I have no idea how to paint Crucible. Let's see. Let's look. There's Crucible. Looks like she's got not a lot of actual green on her. She's got mostly this. So this will be the same white there. I could do the corset, some of the banding in the green. Okay, let's do it. So if I do this part down here in green, and then she's got a green tabard down here. Which I can do and find more areas to put green on her. Knee pads and maybe this detail here, the shin guards. Let's make those green. And let's make the knee pads green. Another knee pad. Okay. And is there any other parts that should really be green right now? I don't see, not really. Maybe the rims around the goggles. Let's make the band of the goggle green. That's cool. Cool. There should be like some green up here. Just where that attaches, for example. Let's do a little green right there. And I'll do this bracer on this arm green. Okay. Right. So now you got a bunch of, I just got her. Would you make a storyline of Guild Ball? I don't understand what that question means. And I'm not sure where you're going. Sorry for knocking the camera around. would you make a storyline of Guild Ball? Yeah. What is that? Hold on. A narrative story. Well, there is a narrative story for Guild Ball, and it's actually pretty good. That we were talking about that the other day, that there are characters that die each season. So you have characters die, get replaced, get injured permanently. There's all kinds of stuff that happens in the fluff, which is awesome. It's like one of the cooler parts of Guild Ball is this idea that, hey, that might be your favorite player this season, but he might not make it to next season. All right, let's start blocking off some of the Brownses here. The Brownses. Lots of room for Brownses. Whoa. Oh man, I didn't even. So for Midas, he's going to have these brown pants like he typically. Yeah, but there's a good narrative story for Guild Ball. It's one of the reasons why buy the updated books and keep my old ones, because I like to read the fluff. And they do a really good job with it too. Wonder what this guy's going to look like. And I think in his plastic form, they go back to the classic Kickstarter exclusive pose where he's basically just standing totally still. Pretty sure that's what they end up doing with Midas. He's got so many bottles. Man, I'm starting to get sleepy. This isn't the most exciting painting, folks. It's part of the reason why I was like, hey, hop on. Because you might be as bored as I am right now. But that's okay. Alrighty, this far into the program. Let's just paint our things and be done. So here's another thing too. I'm going to paint this staff like an off gold. So I'm going to go ahead and hit it with the brown right now to serve as an undercoat. And leave the orb this glacial blue color so that I can go in and fix that at a later point. So you can see I'm not following the studio art closely, but I'm following it roughly so that the team is very easily recognizable and has the iconic colors for the guild. I need to retry my Alchemists for sure. I want to play them again. It's just my issue is that my main opponent plays Alchemists. Alchemists and Morticians, which like season 1 and 2 Guild Ball, those were like the competitive guilds to be playing. Fish, right? Fish, Alchemists, and Morticians were the power 3. This past season, I would say it's Fish, and I don't know who would be in there for number 3. Think about that one a little bit more. Who's the number 3 contender in Guild Ball? I mean, Alchemists are still quite good for season 3. I think Hunters are a lot better than they were. I don't think that still makes them top 3, but they're better. I don't see Masons or Brewers being in the top 3, although my personal preference is for Masons. And I don't really know if the Obulus nerfs were so bad that it takes them out of the top 3. I don't know. I can't say with any certainty. Not a lot of brown on this character, but there's a lot of brown that we can do this way. So we can fix these tanks. Because instead of doing like steel tanks, I'm going to do like coppery type tanks. Nope. Let's see. Oh, you just play them when he brings out his Morticians. Yeah, Fish, Masons, and Morticians. At least Mortician's still strong here. Most people I play Hunters a bit weird. Yeah, Hunters are a bit weird. I got thoroughly decimated by a Hunters team this season, though. And granted, it was an experimental game. I was playing Blackheart-led Union with not a very good roster behind it. But he obviously knew what he was doing with Hunters, and he just tore me to shreds. It was awesome. Masons are a popular team. I don't know if they're a top tier team, though. That's hard to say. Oh man, I am so tired. I think I may just go to bed. I don't even think I'm going to finish this brown. I'm just so sleepy. So at least finish it on Crucible. Was he setting up traps to force you to get fed to the bear? Yes. He would pick a target, snare and debuff that target, and basically sap it until he can get the bear in position to come and finish it off. It was really cool to watch. I think things might have gone slightly better for me if I knew my team. Like if I was playing Masons, maybe I could have counteracted some of the stuff he was doing. But the downside to Masons is ranged character plays, of which the Hunters have many. So that would have been a tough matchup for my Masons too. Yeah, we're totally gonna revamp Crucible here. What am I doing? Why didn't she just have brown boots? What's the matter with me? Why not just do brown boots? That's how they're supposed to play. Yep. That's how hunters play. Is you pick a target and then you choreograph how you're going to single out that target, obliterate it, and then you go to the next one. And ideally, you obliterate it with the bear for the extra VP. It's a very busy model. But then again, pretty much all the Guild Ball stuff is busy now. They're just so chock full of detail. This model has canisters all over. I'm not sure if Crucible is going to be a very good player for me. I don't think so, based on how I think she's supposed to play. I don't think she'll fit into my system very well. Although her ability to give out and keep conditions on models is pretty awesome. It's a very hard thing to overlook as a Masons player. Because without Nimble, she is extremely squishy. I think 14 health and 4 defense. That's about as squishy as you ever want to be for a regular player. You like her for the Intensify and Intensify from the 2 mile. Yeah, for sure. Intensify is quite sweet. Okay, so rather than paint myself into full exhaustion, I think I'm going to be wrapping this up here. Just make sure she's got all the brown on her. Yeah, I know there's a bunch more for me to paint, but I'm sorry, guys. I am exhausted. And I got a long day of work ahead of me tomorrow. And, this isn't a time-critical project, so we're going to call it right there. Right, it's 11 o'clock anyway. I need to go to bed. So that's going to do for this video. Once again, thanks, guys, for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Yeah, next time, we'll see if we can get a few people on the stream, okay? So once again, thanks for watching. Have a good night, guys, and we'll catch you on the next one.